Hello, everybody. I think I'd start us off with a poem today. The sum of all known value and respect I add up in you, whoever you are. The president is up there in the White House for you. It is not you who are there for them. The Congress convenes every December for you. Laws, courts, informing of states, the charters of cities, the going and coming of commerce and mills are all for you. All doctrines, all politics, all civilizations exurge from you. All sculpture and monuments and anything inscribed anywhere are tallied in you. The gist of histories and statistics as far back as the records reach is in you this hour, and myths and tales the same. If you were not breathing and walking here, where would they all be? The most renowned poems would be ashes, orations and plays would be vacuums. All architecture is what you do to it when you look upon it. Did you think it was in the white or gray stone, or the lines of the arches and cornices? Will the whole come back then? Can each see the signs of the best by a look in the looking glass? Is there nothing greater or more? Does it all sit there with you and here with me? Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem. I really like Walt Whitman. He is naturally a consequence of the pseudo-anarchic frontier American philosophy, but he was one of the best to come out of that, I must say. So I would say that the way that art has been cheapened recently is very important. I think that things like plastic have done more to cheapen art than anything else throughout all of history. Oil fuels the combustion engines that J.R.R. Tolkien said were the worst things to ever be visited on the earth, and he might be correct. But ultimately, they're tools, and how they are used is up to the philosophies of the men who use them. Stemming up, or down to the root, if you will. The art that has always been a part of our existence back to the cave drawings, into the architectures and the paintings and the stained glass and all the beauties of the world. That is integral to being a human being. It's necessary. And when people replaced reality with an artificial, cheapened, and deadly, quickly dissolving into little bits that penetrate into us and slice us to bits, that plasticity of reality has been the worst cheapening factor, I believe, that has led people to using their tools to the service of a bad end instead of the service of greatness. And if you want to make America great again, you have to recognize that a tool is only worth as much as the person who uses it. There is no value that can be ascribed to anything outside of the wherewithal and morality of the person who uses it. Speaking of which, supercars are a good example of this. A lot of the people who own supercars, a vast majority of them, are of the most revolting and rancid type. And most women, if they're men, most women would rather die than be with them without the loud noises and flashing paint to distract them and to trick their brains with neo-art that is worthless and make them forget and distract them and, in fact, distract their overall sense of thinking and judging and developing their own personalities and their own moral codes that isn't conscripted to the greater system around them and the men grooming them. A lot of men don't get supercars for themselves. They get them to impress extremely young women. And I would say that when you hit a certain point, you have to consign yourself to your position in society instead of thinking, oh, I'm just going to go and do what was done to me by the horrendous priorly groom generations of sex, drugs, rock and roll, and date 20 years, 30 years down my age. You can't do that. That's exactly the reason why nobody's taking you seriously. And when you recognize that that area in between 45 and 60 is the time when you are the most important person in society, after 70 or so, it gets very hard to access all the wisdom. And in between 60 and 70 is a time where you're a true, wise, venerable, storied member of society, hopefully. But that area in between 45 and 60, that's when you need to grind your most. Up until 30, you're still physically developing. Your brain is still developing. And then in between 30 and 45, you're earning your position in society, I would say. And by the time you're 45, you got to start taking things seriously. You got to start instructing young people instead of extracting from young people. And I would say when people learn to consign artists like Eminem to the dustbin of history, Eminem, who ruined an entire generation of people, who is played by the most annoying, and I know for a fact, rapist pedophiles in society, then, it's exactly, you will know them by their works. You will know them by their works. And Eminem is very, very clearly a monster unleashed on the world by Dre. And it's really disgusting to see, this, down-to-earth beat mixer take this crackhead and inflict him upon our society for zero reason. And to that metric, the entirety of the musical industry is extremely corrupt, one of the most corrupt industries that has ever existed. It's disgusting, and it grooms young men into being the worst parts of themselves, alienating everybody around them, and being trapped in mindsets that only other people in their mindsets can align with, and thus being in the worst possible place in society, consigned to a group of psychopathic young males. And that's exactly where you get your, 40,000 gangs popping up here, there, everywhere, from the Proud Boys to the Bloods and everything in between. So, apparently, the conditions of Weimar Germany were such that at a time of economic disaster, 500,000 men or so, in between 440,000 and 600,000 men, had no skills but war. And from a young age, all they knew was war. And that was very, very bad for the formation of the, Third Reich, NSDAP-style government that would take over semi-forcefully, forcing itself into the higher positions of power. And, I'm a centrist, and that probably hits people's ears really badly, but bear with me. I'm a mobile, active centrist. I'm not a centrist that allows 100 or 50-year-old concepts to define where I sit. I actively look into the grand scheme of where everybody is, and I always try to find the middle ground between every position. I actually believe that's a big archetype in Christianity, where you're finding the cross, you're finding the middle point, you're finding the balance, the structure, and why Christ was a bodhisattva who was nailed to a tree instead of sitting under one. This is incredibly important to understanding, why Edo Domine is a thing, and why trying to create a calendar called Troubadour, or whatever the heck the French did, fails flat on its face. The parasociality of the 60s and 70s has evolved into something far more totalizing, very simple, totalizing than anything prior. When that word parasocial was first crafted, it was crafted by a woman who was observing, fan club leaders and their utter obsession with movie stars and the like, and how this immense, like, hero worship, like living demigod status of the stars were being parasitized by these individuals. With modern streaming and people interacting with their own chats, that is not parasocial. That is just social. In fact, the parasites in that situation are the people saying, hey chat, hey chat, hey chat, hey chat, what should I do, chat? Hey chat, you know, this, that, and the third, chat, give me the fourth. That's the parasite, actually. So keep that in mind. I got an idea for a flag, though. Infinite regression flag that quarters itself infinitely, infinite regression flag. Make it, do it now. Anyways, I hope y'all have a good one. Take care.